It's the Jaden Show, and here's your host, Jaden Cornelious. It's Sunday again, and we're here for another wonderful episode of the Jaden Show. I am very lucky today because I am getting to pop all the way to the US of A to speak to a wonderful young lady who not only is an incredible soprano opera singer, but she's also the founder of the OperaMaya Foundation. Now, you're going to hear a little bit more about that from her later, but let me just show you a little taster of what it's all about.
Gracias, yo quisiera agradecer a esta organización de OperaMaya. Cuando hay una pieza de ópera escrita en lengua maya, entonces OperaMaya realmente alcanza el nivel del valor cultural, de rendir tributo a la lengua maya. Y entonces llamarse OperaMaya cobra todavía mucho más fuerza.
Located in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, OperaMaya has the mission to create world-renowned artistic expressions that exemplify both the historical and contemporary Maya culture. OperaMaya produces several events throughout the year, including the OperaMaya Cancun Classic Concert Series and OperaMaya International Music Festival, a cultural exchange of musicians from across the globe, held the last week of May and first week of June in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. For the last 8 years, OperaMaya has brought live orchestral performances to cities and towns throughout the Yucatan Peninsula. With open-air, free-to-the-public concerts, OperaMaya was the first orchestra to perform in places like Tulum, Citas, Pistay, Carrillo Puerto, and the first opera to perform in Valladolid, Puerto Morelos, and Isla Mujeres. With concerts held annually in Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Mérida, and Campeche, OperaMaya has had the honor to be the first ever to perform in Maya in World Heritage Site and one of 7 wonders of the world, Chichen Itza. Now, after bringing opera to the Maya world, OperaMaya brings the Maya to the home of opera in Bloomington, Indiana, through the first annual event entitled Viva! Featuring discussions and poetry readings with Maya poet and winner of the Mexican National Prize in Poetry, Vildanane Villegas Carrillo, and the U.S. premiere of Ash, the 2017 OperaMaya Composition Competition winner by Luis Ruelas, hosted by the Latin American Center in the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music. Founded by soprano Mary Grogan, OperaMaya, together with the university and community sponsors, celebrates the living and vibrant culture of the Maya. Que viva OperaMaya!
I've actually been lucky enough to attend one of the OperaMaya concerts, and it was mind-blowing. The talent, it just was an incredible night. And we are hoping that it comes back to Puerto Morelos this year again, because that's where I saw it a couple of years ago. However, there is no sponsorship in Puerto Morelos at the moment, so hence one of the other reasons for this show. Because if you feel like you could sponsor the event here in Puerto Morelos, then please let Mary know. You're going to hear more about it, and you're going to find all her links mentioned in the rest of the program. But let's go and meet and hear the story from the woman herself. Please welcome this week's special guest, Mary Grogan. Mary Grogan, welcome to the Jaden Show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a big fan. I've been following you on Facebook for quite some time, and I'm so enthralled with all the things that you're doing for the animals. And I love to watch about the refuge and everything. I don't think you might not know this about me, but I actually have 2 Mexican cats that live with me in
Okay.
the United States. So I'm a big fan of all the work you're doing.
Oh, pleasure. Well, and it's completely reciprocated because I didn't know anything about anything until some friend said to me, Jaden, you sing classical and kind of, a few arias and stuff like that. Did you know there's an opera group that comes to Puerto Morelos every year? I'm like, no. All of a sudden, as if by magic, you happen to be in the area. And I got my first taste of OperaMaya, which blew my socks off. I have never felt so connected. I mean, for me, coming from London to live in Mexico was the toughest thing I've ever done, away from everything I've ever known. And all of a sudden, the music that I'd been singing, the music that I'd been listening to, all of a sudden was in this tiny little town in the middle of Mexico, in the middle of the Riviera Maya in Mexico. And I was like, oh my God, this is just the first time I felt at home in bloody years. So it was amazing. But before we go into talking about OperaMaya, because obviously we so need to be talking about this, I want to talk about you actually, because I find it very surprising that you've only actually been singing for 10 years because you started at the age of 16.
Well,
Orlando Opera Company.
That must be the new math, right? That must be the new math.
Darling, it's my math at the moment, believe me. But yeah, because you started at 16 with the Orlando Opera Company, right?
That's true. It is true. My first role was in Orlando, and I performed in Carmen in my very first opera when I was 16.
Oh, crazy.
And I studied from Martina Arroyo, which maybe someone's heard of. She has a Kennedy honor.
Wow.
So she sat next to Elton John to receive her Kennedy honor. So she's a little famous.
So she's all right. She knows her stuff. Cool.
But I had a really good privilege to study with her and with a lot of really great people. And so I came up of at a time when those folks were still teaching, and I had the opportunity to study with her and then move to Europe and perform in Europe for a while. And ended up in Mexico at some point and fell in love with Mexico, fell in love with the Riviera Maya, much as yourself, lived there for a while as well.
Okay.
And, so only performing 10 years. You're right. I'm a newborn.
You crammed a lot in, sister. You have a lot in. What would you say so far, obviously, apart from meeting me in Puerto Morelos, has been the highlight of your career?
Oh, wow. So the highlight of my career, my goodness, that's a great question. I think that singing in Italy has a very unique, it just is a very unique experience. In many ways, actually, similar to singing in Puerto Morelos. There is something in common in the sense of being in an open concert when you have people who are from the community who are so passionate about opera in attendance. It makes, as you know, as a performer, when you reciprocate with your audience, right? You feed off of each other. And so when you have an audience that's so in love with what you're doing, it creates this really magical experience. And I think as a performer, we can't ask for anything better than that. And that feeling of reciprocal love. So in Italy, I think that would I can't necessarily pinpoint one time, but I can say that I lived in Uderzo, and I was studying at La Scala's Young Artist Program. And so I had time to travel a bit and perform a bit in quite a few venues throughout Italy. And it was just such a privilege to always be around people who not only loved what you were doing, but they knew opera. Yeah. And it's such a part of their culture. Obviously, it's the birthplace and of our genre. And they just are such warm people in general. So I found that time to be uniquely special. But again, we've also had these wonderful experiences in Mexico, right? I think it's a very different warmth because a lot of times we're bringing culture and we're bringing opera to Mayan communities where maybe they've not experienced this. And so it's not a part of their culture and it's not a part of their heritage, but they are also likewise such warm people, and the reception is so warm that it makes for that lovely experience and just heartwarming.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you miss, I mean, obviously you still perform with OperaMaya, but do you miss kind of your solo career and your plans, to be the artist that you are? Or has OperaMaya kind of taken over everything and now that's pretty much what you're doing? Is there any, like, not bitterness, because I know OperaMaya is your passion, but do you think, oh my God, I wish I had a little bit of time just for Mary Grogan to do her thing?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because I was thinking about this recently that, I often refer to OperaMaya as my brainchild, right? That it's my child, my creation. And now it has this life of its own. And I'm sure I'm very, very blessed in that I feel sure that my child will live beyond me and it has its own wings and someone will come and carry the torch and we'll get to go on. But likewise, like all parents, I think you lack time for yourself. And there's that feeling sometimes of just sort of giving your all to the other entity, but the rewards of it are so far beyond anything that I could imagine for myself. And I also think that life in general has all these chapters, right? And so I had this wonderful opportunity to be young and in Italy and all those wonderful experiences that I will never trade because they're still a part of me. But it's wonderful to also be in this moment and to be able to dedicate my time to OperaMaya and projects in general. I have actually a couple other opera projects, one that's happening called Nantahala Opera, which is it's actually a Cherokee word and it's from North Carolina. And it's a similarly the program has similar intent in that it's bringing opera to a region that doesn't have as much exposure. So
Wow.
I have all these projects that really do fill your time and your energy because it's your passion. But sure, absolutely. There's always that need for balance. And so I never say no when someone calls with a project and says, Mary, can you come sing this? Can you do that? Like I always try to find a way to do it because, you need that too. You need that balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like those parents in real life need their, their quiet time alone or doing their own thing. It's the same.
Well, and it's also like, you're getting the kid to ride the bike with the stabilizers, but once those stabilizers are off, you can go back into, whatever you want to do. You don't have to watch that kid with the stabilizers anymore. The bike's going. So I carry on.
No, I was just going to say that's a great analogy. I remember when I used to joke that when OperaMaya got more followers than I had on, all the different platforms and everything, I was like, well, my child is walking now. My child has its own life. It doesn't depend on me in the same way.
Doesn't need mummy.
Yep, it's doing its own thing now.
But then if you're like, I know there are, I've got friends with the same kind of mums that are like, no, you're not leaving. No, I'm hanging on to you a little bit. But I think with the history and your work ethic and the amazing opportunities you've had, I can see them both flourishing side by side and completely separately at the same time. Right, that Mary Grogan will be doing her thing, as well as OperaMaya doing its thing and bringing phenomenal music and just magic actually to a place that would never have received that style of magic before. I used to do, when I first started singing classical crossover music, I started a schools tour called Breaking the Mold because I would turn up to theatres in jeans and a t-shirt with piercings and tattoos and sing De La Fantasia and Nessun Dorma and stuff. And then it was like a scene from Pretty Woman. They'd all point me in the direction of the changing room and I'd be like, no, I haven't got anything to change into. I'm just singing like this. And so I decided to do this schools tour because, I would go into school and we would talk about, what are your strengths? Do you think because you're, like an 11-year-old boy that you really need to be really amazing at football, but actually maybe you're really good at drama or even needlework. It doesn't matter. It's about doing the things that you want and breaking like the molds the way your parents and people think. And it would all end up with, you know, what music do you think I sing? And they'll be, oh, we think you do rock, sir, or we think you're a rapper, sir. And then I would do a 25-minute little mini concert singing just in Italian and Spanish of you know, classical and classical crossover music, and it was amazing to see kids experience that for the first time. And I mean, it wasn't done to sell albums, but I've never sold so many albums in my life. Their mums were coming in, they were wanting a classical crossover album with Nella Fantasia, with, you know, all these different tracks. At 10, 11 years old, they were now listening to classical music. I was like, oh mate, this is amazing. Like, the feeling of being able to give something new to someone as well is absolutely phenomenal. Even better sometimes than just getting up and singing, right?
I completely agree. I think that's, and you've highlighted something that I think about a lot, in that this new generation, you know, I work with children now as well. And this new generation, I think, has actually crossed over that bridge of us having to tell them that maybe your thing should be, you know, can be more than what it was in the past typical for you, right? So, you know, that you think you should be into football, or you think you should be into this, but you could also be into that. I don't think they even have that parameter anymore. I think that they think, so they don't even see the box. They don't have to see, they don't
Cool.
think outside. They don't see the box. And so they're free in ways that sometimes is quite startling, but it's also refreshing, and it's exciting to bring things to them in a new way. You're absolutely right, and to connect with them and share classical music, because classical music is still evolving, right?
Completely.
And talk about crossover. I mean, honestly, when I was 10 years ago, when I was starting out, the classical musical world was a lot more stuffy. I think we were just a bit snobbier, to be really honest. And we sort of prided ourselves on being snobby. I think that being snobby and elite was something that a lot of folk thought you had to be really good, and you had to preserve the craft, right? And you had to preserve, you couldn't have, it was us or them. You couldn't really have this crossover. People
absolutely.
Things, and it was just different. And I think that now, when I look at it, the people that I find the most refreshing, the people that I find the most successful, are the people who have embraced those types of different thoughts, and who've broken free from that sense of snobbery or whatever, that sort of social class that we thought we needed to identify with in classical music. And it's part of my mission as well, is to break the confines of class and culture and bring opera to people who might not have been exposed to it. And so that's a super big passion of mine.
That's amazing. Well, Pavarotti got a lot of stick back in the day for doing his Pavarotti and Friends, and oh my God, singing with pop stars. You don't do that. But he was the pioneer of classical crossover music. I mean, he is, well, he's now God because he lives in heaven, right? So
Right.
the man really is. But he started to take it to a different kind of audience, and, you know, was singing with, you know, really incredibly famous pop stars at the same time, and amazing. But he got a lot of stick for that. And now, that would have been, it's almost natural, right? And also, you know, Freddie Mercury as well, singing, you know, Barcelona, and, you know, but no one ever put that in with no one ever put that into, like, it was effectively classical crossover. He's a rock pop artist and singing with a complete phenomenal, you know, opera diva, you know, so, but no, everyone kind of ignored that it was a lovely song, but it was still pop and rock because it was Freddie Mercury rather than, but it was effectively a classical crossover song. I mean, she sung, you know, an amazing vocal performance by her. So,
Oh, definitely. No, and I think Pavarotti would have enjoyed people talking about him that way. I had the privilege of studying with him in a certain program in Italy. He was a part of my experience at La Scala, and he was just such a kind person, and I think he became such a mega star that he was a star outside of opera. I think he was one of, other than Callas, I think he was like the next, you know, star who reached beyond stardom within opera, right? He was just a star, and you knew he was an opera singer. And so he had that crossover naturally by being just so famous, right? I think Montserrat was obviously very famous, and you know, that was great. But really, the more famous party in that duo was
Freddie.
Exactly. But you hit it on the head with Pavarotti. I think that he would have enjoyed hearing you talk about him that way, because I think he was open to all of that. And, you know, later he sang with Celine Dion and all kinds of other things. So he sang with a lot of people.
I think talking through with other artists, especially like over since COVID actually, and you know, I've spoken to some friends in the Canadian tenors in Canada and different kind of opera and classical singers as well. And it's been really, I think COVID brought us to this awareness that actually our work is desperately fragile. Like everything can end in a moment because all of a sudden you can't perform, you can't do what you've been doing for years. But it's also brought on some level the end to the pigeonholing, because now if I want to sing Dancing My Father by Luther Vandross and Nessun Dorma in the same set, I can do that, because I'm always going to sound like Jaden singing. So I'm free now to be Jaden. When I was younger, I was a pop star, and if you veered off of that pop R&B thing, then we can't identify with you. We don't know who you are. We don't know what you want, so you're dropped. Whereas now, Joey Nicefero from the Canadian tenors and Destino, you know, he can do phenomenal opera arias, and he can have The Winner Takes It All done at Abbey Road Studio with the London Symphony Orchestra, and sounds incredible because now he has that freedom to be able to use his classically superbly trained voice to do the things that he also finds magic in, the things that he's passionate about. And I think that's lovely that we've got that element of movement now, that we can still use our voices, but you know, within the other genres of music at the same time.
Well, I've said, people even before the pandemic have been talking about this sort of death of opera, right? In that the opera houses were closing. We were in, especially during the great financial crisis of like 2007, 2009, people, a lot changed in our industry. It's been changing for a time, even before that, but a lot changed in our industry at that time. And I think people were really scared, what are we going to do, and how are we going to adapt and things like that. And I have a very, very, I don't know if it's unique, but I have a very, very intense take on it that I think has been magnified by the pandemic, which is that opera singers and opera in general as an art form need to focus on being ourselves. I think that when we try to be something for everyone, okay? When we try to be a Hollywood star, for example, when we try to be in high def and a Hollywood glam and all these other things that we're sort of putting those demands on the industry, it's a bit like, it's a bit of mortification. You're not really able to, how do I say this? You take away a little bit of the freak show. And I think that really opera from its inception has been a freak show. We were, these superhuman people who could do these crazy things with our voices. And now when you put them on the mic, then it's changing that, right? It's changing that because you're using this technology to amplify the sound that really the uniqueness was in that freak show. I mean, I don't want to call us the bearded lady, but in a way we were, we had this ability to do something super weird and cool at the same time that is uniquely found in people who don't always fit the mold of a Hollywood movie and who don't typically necessarily have the high def plastic, kind of super ultra, I don't know the best way to describe that, but you know where I'm getting at. We're not made for TV Kardashians. We're sort of a little bit more rugged in many ways.
But do you think it's because it was a very upper class elite, only the rich would be able to afford to go to an opera, because it was kind of, so people thought it was not an obtainable type of music, but then, so do you think classical crossover has kind of watered down. I mean, I've heard the same with country music as well, that the pure country artists are saying, you know, we have people like the hip hop artists like Little Nas coming on doing country music now, and Olivia Newton-John got blasted because she was an English Aussie girl coming out to America singing Country Roads and winning all these awards for the best country artist. Do you think it's because music is evolving that all of it's opening up, or do you think or do you think opera also kind of maybe it had set itself apart for too long, and just all of a sudden people could access so many other types of music that they were kind of veering off of the whole opera thing and listening to other things that were a little bit more accessible to them?
I think two things. One, opera's expensive. Real opera productions are incredibly expensive. And the digital platforms that we have now, where we can have this discussion in my living room, and we can even perform from here and reach so many people. All of this type of thing is not preclusive to an opera production, and this is so much more economical. And so all these other mediums have this ability to produce art and to produce productions in much more economical ways than opera. So you can start with opera's expensive. It's expensive to produce. There's just a lot of people involved. There's an enormous amount of overhead for theaters, for the orchestra, the performers, the amount of rehearsal time, the ballet, if it's an opera that has dancing, all this that goes into it. That's not even counting the business side of it and all of the staff and the people that have to run the production from behind the scenes. So opera's expensive, number one, and that makes it a little bit more preclusive. But at the same time, I think that number two, you have simultaneously a reduced economy with a very expensive art form, and then you have all these other new interesting things. And I would also caution to say that our, as a society, our time, our attention span gets shorter and shorter every single year. I think that they said recently that we went from like a 30-minute attention span to like 15, and now we're down to like 5. I think with TikTok we'll get to 3 or 2. I don't
30
know.
seconds, I think.
Right? But the attention span is really another big factor, because an opera is really long. Like classical works are hours long. And so, having someone in an audience listening in a traditional sense to music that is 3 to sometimes even like Wagner opera can be extremely long, we're talking lots of hours of music.
Wow.
And so the attention span for the amount of actual, shall we say, action is relatively difficult, because in opera, you have action, but then you have obviously a lot of talking about the action.
Okay.
It's not exactly like the fast pace of a movie, right? Yeah. And so with our reduced attention spans and an expensive art form, you're narrowing down your audience to a really kind of, the people who I see now who really enjoy going to an opera tend to enjoy it for a couple of different reasons. One, they really love just it connects with them emotionally, and they feel they just, maybe instinctually, maybe the way they're processing their own emotions and things like that, maybe there's not a way that they can do that except for with this unique art form and this unique sound, right? Or they're trying to, enjoy an experience for what they think that means, being a part of a group, being part of an elite, being part of a whatever. I tend to really reach for the first one. And I think that there's a ton of potential opera audience in the world that doesn't know their opera audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they haven't been able to experience it on that personal level.
Yeah.
And so again, my point back to the beginning is that opera does have to evolve. But my real point is, rather than trying to become something that we're not, rather than trying to be that high def version of ourselves, I think that we should focus on being who we really are, and being true to who we are allows us to then reach in that uniquely our way that no one else can, this audience. Now, does it mean that our repertoire, the operas that we perform might, need to modernize? Well, sure. Am I against cuts in traditional works? Not at all. There's a reason that we produce an opera gala every year, which is really sort of like the hits of opera, is because it's a good introduction to opera without seeing the full production that, again, requires a much more patient and in-depth attention span.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do believe it's going to adapt, it's going to evolve. The art form will not die because it's amazing, but the way we produce it has to change. I just want us to, as an industry, not forget what makes us unique. And it's really truly that, cliche of, when the fat lady sings, really, there's something to that. There is something amazing about a human who can produce these types of sounds without a microphone, who can produce these types of sounds in a way that's, classically trained. So I think it's just worth underscoring. But the big houses, they're going to do what they do. And right now they're miking things as well, because they're trying to broadcast and get on, the Med is online now. You can listen to it in different places, which is great for accessibility and whatnot. But yeah,
I think what you're doing with like OperaMaya, for me, it was because I like a lot of opera. However, I always felt that I wasn't worthy of being in an opera, almost of not singing, but I mean as being in the audience, because it was just like so overwhelming. But what you were doing, and what you did with the OperaMaya as well, was the fact that all of a sudden I was in this most intimate, beautiful concert, listening to this incredible art form. But I felt like I was okay to be there listening to it. I didn't feel like, oh my God, maybe they're going to look at me and think, oh my God, what's that boy even? Why is he even here? Surely he should be listening to, I don't know, Beyonce or something. It was just like, all of a sudden it became like, it's that accessibility. It was personal. It was something that I was able to experience as just being me. And I thought that was magical, like just incredible. So, let's talk a little bit about OperaMaya, I feel, just because obviously we need to be talking about a particular fundraising. Would you call it fundraising? Support raising?
Well, OperaMaya, it's probably worth mentioning a little bit about, what OperaMaya is. OperaMaya is a nonprofit. I know that we've talked about it as my brainchild, but it's this idea that we should bring opera to the region of the Maya, right? And so we join an orchestra every year together from all around the world. We bring opera singers together from all around the world, and we tour the Yucatan Peninsula, and we perform in venues which are designed to be free to the public. Mm-hmm. And so in order to do those types of things, you have to fundraise, right? Again, opera is expensive, but making it accessible to the people and making it the type of performance which I'm really delighted to hear you felt so included in. It's really what we're trying to do. And so, yes, specifically, we are trying to come back to Puerto Morelos. We have in Mexico different sponsors that work with us for different things. We have some sponsors in the United States. We have different people that we put together. A lot of in-kind donations is really the heart of how we operate. But at the end of the day, there are things that cost money that we have to do. And so, when a venue like the church, the parroquia in Puerto Morelos, is our is opening its doors to us, right? And it's free to the public. It's completely accessible for anyone and everyone who can join. And but we have to do some fundraising behind the scenes to make that kind of thing happen. And in particular this year, we used to have a corporate sponsor who had a particular relationship with Puerto Morelos that they would donate for that concert.
Wow.
This year that's changed. And so we're looking to get a little bit more grassroots, if you will, and do something new, do something different. It's always worth a try, right? So we're going to be actually holding our first ever Facebook fundraiser as a nonprofit.
How cool.
Yeah, it is. I think people, oh my goodness, I really am showing my age here, but people have been doing this a while. Even other people have set up fundraisers for OperaMaya before, but we ourselves never did in that way. We were a little bit more focused on grants and working with government or working with corporations, and again, trying to provide a service for people without charging people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, but I hadn't personally ever done a fundraiser on Facebook. So we had to learn how to do it. And we, as a nonprofit, have this opportunity to do it a really specific way through Facebook. And it's actually a wonderful tool. I'm probably the last person in the world to learn about it. Probably everybody already knew about it, but it's a wonderful tool for nonprofits. And and so we're going to do this and offer the opportunity to anyone who'd like to join us in this fundraising effort to donate.
That's going to be amazing. And also still looking for sponsorships and in-kind deals as well, right?
Absolutely.
That'd be fantastic. So during the whole of this interview, underneath, and I think it's gone this way, is all of the links to all of OperaMaya social media platforms and to your fine self as well. And so how can, if people want to help and to donate and to promote this event and also help search for kind of funds and other ways to help you come to actually not just for Puerto Morelos, but all the other places to help with the whole project of the river of the OperaMaya within the Riviera Maya. How can people do that? So where do they need to go? Do they need to come to you directly? Do they need to be going to your Facebook, OperaMaya Facebook? Where do we start sending people to?
Well, we're going to have a button on both pages. I think we're going to have a link from our website, which is just operamaya.com to our Facebook, but the actual fundraiser is going to be through the OperaMaya Facebook page, and there should be a button available according to Facebook where you can say donate now, and just right there. And the unique thing about Facebook is they guarantee 100% of the funds are sent directly to the charity.
Wow.
There's absolutely no fees or administration or any of that. It's going 100% to what you're trying to sponsor. So I think that's lovely. And yeah, this fundraiser is obviously from Puerto Morelos. It is one of our very favorite places to perform in our tour. And every place is unique. Every place is beautiful and wonderful, and we love the people everywhere we go. But there's always something so special about singing in Puerto Morelos, and I'm not kidding. My singers tell me that every time, that it's one of their favorite, if not their favorite concert. And I know personally, it's one of my very favorite concerts to be at, because the energy in the concert, the audience is what makes that concert so special. We're the same OperaMaya everywhere we go, but the audience in Puerto Rico.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's the people and the reaction, because you're working with individuals. So every show, you might be singing the same songs, but every single time you sing that song, because the people listening are different, the whole experience changes, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
and
we need you back, sister. You have to come back. We need you back in Puerto Morelos. I mean, this is not not an option. This is has to be, quite frankly.
Has to be. Well, and we have a date planned for Puerto Morelos. It's our intention to come this summer. We just are trying to put it together the best way possible so that we can have the funds we need to do that and make it happen. Because just to give you an idea, we have to move an entire orchestra and singers and equipment, instruments, everything from our hotel in Cancun to Puerto Morelos and back. And if you can imagine your gas price of your car, now imagine a couple of tourism coaches that you have to rent, and vans, and the people and the logistics involved with moving the instruments. So even beyond fees for artists or anything, we're just talking logistics.
Yeah.
It's endeavor. So we want to be able to come, and I know we'll be able to do it. We're just going to have to be creative in our funding. So,
well, guys at home, you've heard this woman speak. We need to make this happen. So you can go to the Facebook pages of both Mary Grogan and of OperaMaya, and there is a button there where you can donate. If you have any problems donating, then please speak to the young lady herself and find out the other ways that you can support, and because we need to make this happen this year. Mary, thank you so much for being part of my show. You are a bloody star, you are.
I cannot thank you enough. And it's been a delight ever since I met you at the first show to follow you and see all the things you're doing. And I really admire you very much. And thank you for having us. And we will see you in our shows this summer.
Absolutely. And we'll touch base again. Maybe when they're going, we can do a Jaden Show special, and we can kind of show what's going on. That'd be fantastic. And I think we need to have a cappuccino when you're here. So when you get to Puerto Morelos and you've got 10 minutes free, I'll pop down on my bicycle. We'll have a quick coffee. Mary Grogan, thank you so much. You are amazing. Thank you so much for being part of my show. Big love to you.
Thank you.
Take care, honey. Bye-bye. Such an amazing woman and such an amazing venture as well. OperaMaya is really, really incredible. And if you feel that you can help support or sponsor OperaMaya in Puerto Morelos this year, then you know where to go. The links have been running along the bottom of this screen throughout the interview, and also you can go to Mary's Facebook where you can donate to make OperaMaya come to Puerto Morelos this year. Thank you so much for watching my show again. I'm loving doing these shows, and I'm loving the fact that you're supporting me to do them as well. So please like, please share, please comment, please subscribe, please tell all your friends and your family and your neighbours and your enemies to do the same, because it's really, really, really wonderful to be able to do this. Thank you so much. I will be back again next Sunday with another fantabulous The Jaden Show. Who's going to be the guest next Sunday? You'll find out on Wednesday. Take care, lots of love, and I'm going to leave you with the beautiful dulcet tone of Mary Grogan. See you next Sunday. Take care.
Ooh.